Paris, 1925. The Eiffel Tower, one of the most recognizable structures on Earth, stands as a symbol of French engineering and national pride. But what if I told you that one man convinced 6 wealthy businessmen that the government was secretly dismantling it? What if I told you he sold it, twice, and walked away with millions, without firing a single shot? This is the story of Victor Lustig, a con artist so skilled that he didn't just fool the rich and powerful, he made them thank him for the privilege. This is the story of the man who sold the Eiffel Tower. January 4th, 1890. Hostinec, Bohemia, a small village in what is now the Czech Republic. A boy is born. His father, the local burgomaster, expects him to follow a respectable path. Instead, the boy will become one of history's most wanted criminals. His name was Victor Lustig. Or was it Robert Miller? Or Count Victor von Lustig? The truth is, no one really knew who he was. At 19, Lustig severed all ties with his family and moved to Paris. By his 20s, he was already perfecting his craft: petty theft, gambling scams, identity fraud. He spoke 5 languages fluently. He dressed in tailored suits. He moved through Europe's most exclusive hotels like he owned them. And in a way, he did. Lustig understood something most people don't. Confidence isn't just a feeling. It's a weapon. He kept a personal code, 10 commandments for con men. Among them, be a patient listener. Never look bored, never get drunk. Wait for the other person to reveal their political opinions, then agree with them. And perhaps most importantly, never boast. Just let your importance be quietly obvious. By the early 1900s, Lustig had perfected his game. He targeted millionaires on transatlantic ocean liners, fleecing them in rigged poker games with a partner who knew exactly when to fold and when to strike. When World War I broke out and interrupted his transatlantic hustles, Lustig didn't panic. He simply moved to Paris and waited. He sold fake historical documents, forged letters from Mark Twain, Marie Curie, even Abraham Lincoln. When a magazine editor questioned the authenticity of a newly discovered Twain story, Lustig didn't just defend it. He sold them a Walt Whitman poem on his way out. He was arrested dozens of times across Europe, but he always escaped through bribery, manipulation, or sheer charm. His daughter Betty would later recall that the first words she learned from him weren't mom or dad. They were, never speak to the police. And in 1925, while sitting in a Parisian hotel room reading a newspaper, Victor Lustig saw an opportunity that would cement his place in criminal history. May 1925. The Hôtel de Crillon, one of the most luxurious hotels in Paris. Lustig checks in. He pays off the staff. He transforms a basement storage room into something that looks like a government office. And then, he reads the newspaper. There's an article about the Eiffel Tower. Maintenance costs are astronomical. 60 tons of paint every 7 years just to keep it from rusting. Some officials are quietly suggesting it might be time to tear it down. Most people would read that and move on. Victor Lustig saw a gold mine. The Eiffel Tower had been controversial since the day it was built. Designed for the 1889 World's Fair, it was never meant to be permanent. Parisians hated it. They called it a barbaric bulk, a ghastly dream. Writer Guy de Maupassant famously said it should be smashed. Lustig knew this, and he knew how to exploit it. He acquired official government stationery, possibly through bribery, possibly through an accomplice dating a government clerk. He forged credentials identifying himself as Deputy Director General of the Ministère des Postes et Télégraphes. And then, he sent out invitations. 6 letters. 6 of the most successful scrap metal dealers in Paris. Confidential. Urgent. A private meeting regarding a lucrative government contract. They all showed up. Picture this, a luxurious hotel. A man in an expensive suit. Official documents with wax seals. Everything perfect. Lustig welcomed them warmly. He spoke with authority. He explained that the French government had made a difficult and controversial decision. The Eiffel Tower was going to be dismantled, but the public couldn't know. Not yet. The contract to purchase over 7,000 tons of scrap iron would be awarded to one of them. Secretly, discreetly. The dealers were stunned, but they didn't question it. Why would they? Lustig even arranged a private tour of the Eiffel Tower in a government limousine. He walked them through the structure, pointed out where the iron would be cut, answered technical questions with perfect precision. He was flawless, but Lustig was studying them the entire time. He was looking for the mark, the one who wanted it badly enough, the one who would act quickly, the one who would stay quiet. His name was André Poisson, a scrap dealer new to Paris, desperate to prove himself in high society. Lustig befriended him. They laughed together in the hotel lobby. When Lustig had urgent government business in Bordeaux, he brought Poisson along, and then he played his masterstroke. In a private meeting, Lustig acted nervous, embarrassed. He admitted, quietly, almost shamefully, that as a low-level government official, he didn't make much money. If Monsieur Poisson wanted to secure the contract, a small bribe would go a long way. Poisson didn't hesitate. In fact, the bribe made it more believable. Because in France in 1925, that's how business was done. Poisson paid 1.2 million francs for the Eiffel Tower, about 4.2 million euros today. He also paid an additional 70,000 francs as a bribe, 200,000 euros in today's currency. Lustig shook his hand, promised the contracts would be finalized, and vanished. By the time Poisson realized he'd been conned, Lustig was already back in Vienna. And here's the most astonishing part. Poisson never reported it. Why? Because he was too embarrassed. Reporting the scam would mean admitting he'd tried to bribe a government official. So Poisson stayed silent, and 1 month later, Victor Lustig came back to Paris and sold the Eiffel Tower again. When Lustig's accomplices heard he wanted to run the same scam twice, they thought he was insane. But Lustig knew something they didn't. Silence is a con artist's best friend. The second time, he gathered another group of scrap dealers, used the same office, the same credentials, the same pitch. But this time, the buyer was more skeptical. When the deal fell through and he suspected fraud, he went straight to the police. The newspapers exploded with the story. Lustig knew it was time to leave Paris, permanently. But the Eiffel Tower scam was just one chapter in a career built on illusion. One of his most famous cons? The Romanian box. Lustig would approach a wealthy target with a small wooden device. He'd explain that it was an illegal machine, one that could print perfect counterfeit $100 bills. He'd demonstrate it, insert a real bill, close the box, wait 6 hours. When he opened it, 2 perfect $100 bills. The catch? It took 6 hours per bill. Slow, tedious, but flawless. Of course, the mark wanted to buy it. Lustig would sell the box for $20,000 to $30,000. The buyer would take it home, print a few more bills, real bills Lustig had preloaded into hidden compartments, and believe they'd struck gold. By the time the machine stopped working, Lustig was long gone. But perhaps his boldest move was conning Al Capone. Chicago, the 1920s. Lustig approached the most dangerous gangster in America with an investment opportunity. $50,000. Double your money in 2 months. Capone was suspicious, but intrigued. Lustig took the money and did nothing. 2 months later, he returned to Capone's office. Nervous, apologetic. He explained that the deal had fallen through. He handed the money back, every cent. Capone was stunned. No one returned money to Al Capone. Impressed by Lustig's honesty, Capone gave him $5,000 as a reward. That was the con. Lustig never intended to invest the money. He just needed Capone to trust him long enough to hand over a reward. By the 1930s, Lustig had relocated to America with his wife and daughter, settling in the Chicago suburbs. But his ambitions had grown too large. He wasn't just running small cons anymore, he was counterfeiting money on a massive scale, printing tens of thousands of fake $100 bills using stolen government plates. The Secret Service had been tracking him for years. In 1935, they finally closed in. But it wasn't brilliant detective work that brought him down. It was his mistress, angry and scorned, who tipped them off. Lustig was arrested in New York City. His counterfeiting operation was dismantled. His empire was over. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, 15 for counterfeiting, 5 more for escaping custody. In 1938, he was transferred to Alcatraz, the most secure prison in America. The place where America sent criminals it never wanted to see again. The man who had escaped custody multiple times would never escape again. March 11th, 1947. Springfield, Missouri. Victor Lustig died in a prison hospital. He was 57 years old. Officially, the cause was pneumonia. But some believe he died of something deeper, a brain abscess that had been slowly killing him. Others think he died of a broken spirit, a man who had lived by his wits, now stripped of the only thing he ever had: freedom. His death certificate listed his occupation as apprentice salesman, and according to prison records, in his final months, Lustig started meeting with the prison chaplain. He expressed curiosity about religion for the first time in his life. Was it genuine repentance, or one last con, an attempt to manipulate his way to early release? We'll never know. So what do we learn from Victor Lustig? His methods weren't complicated. He didn't use violence. He didn't need a weapon. He used something far more powerful: trust. Today, we see the same tactics everywhere: fake investment gurus on Instagram, email scams from government officials, crypto schemes promising impossible returns. The technology has changed. The psychology hasn't. Lustig understood that people don't want to be conned, but they do want to believe. They want to believe in shortcuts, in insider access, in opportunities that seem too good to pass up. And when someone presents themselves with confidence, authority, and just enough exclusivity, we listen. That's why the Eiffel Tower scam worked. Not because Lustig was smarter than everyone else, but because he understood human nature better than most. He knew what people wanted to hear, and he gave it to them. The world has changed since 1925, but the con hasn't. We still fall for the same tricks, the same promises, the same illusions of trust. Victor Lustig never resorted to violence. He left no physical scars, but he left many of his victims in emotional and financial ruin, and he never expressed remorse. Christopher Sandford, who wrote a biography on Lustig, said it best. He proved time and again that with a plausible story, a certain charm, and the willingness to play the long game, you can appeal to the part of us that wants to feel appreciated. The more things change, the more scams stay the same. Victor Lustig died in a prison cell, but his greatest trick was making people forget how easy it is to be fooled. Because the most dangerous criminals in history didn't use guns. They used confidence.